Bisi and Sade had been friends for years, closer than sisters, sharing everything from their secrets to their dreams. When Bisi got engaged, Sade was genuinely happy for her, at first. But the moment Bisi introduced her fiancé, Bayo, to Sade, something dark stirred within her. Bayo was handsome, successful, and everything she secretly desired. Sade was the kind of friend who celebrated your successes with you, or so it seemed. When her best friend, Bisi, did her traditional introduction rites ceremony to the dashing Bayo, Sade smiled on the outside, but inside, her heart twisted with envy. Sade couldn't shake the feeling that Bisi didn't deserve a man like Bayo. Why should she have everything while I'm left with nothing? Her jealousy slowly consumed her. Bisi and Bayo's wedding was just months away, but Ayo couldn't let that happen. She knew of the village herbalist Baba Olumide, rumored to have powers that could alter fate. And so, one day, she ventured to the edge of the village, her heart racing as she made her way down the narrow path to the herbalist's hut. Baba Olumide welcomed her in, his hut filled with the thick scent of burning herbs. "What brings you here, young woman?" he asked, though he already seemed to know. "I want to ruin my best friend's relationship. She is engaged to a man I want," she confessed, her voice trembling with greed and fear. The herbalist smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "There's a price for meddling in love," he warned, but she didn't care. "Whatever it takes," she replied. "I want Bayo. I want him to leave Bisi and come to me," Sade confessed, her voice trembling with greed and fear. The herbalist smiled. "First we must break them up before anything else." He gave a charm to rub on Bisi's face. He asked to return when that was done. She left wondering how to get it on Bisi's face without arousing suspicion. A few days later, Bisi's mother traveled to her hometown and left Bisi alone with her brothers. Bisi invited Sade over to spend the night with her. Sade decided this was a good time. She mixed the substance and took it with her. That night, while Bisi slept, Sade lay down quietly until she was sure her friend was in a deep sleep. Then she got up and gently rubbed the substance on her face, then went back to sleep herself. The next day Sade returned to her home. Later in the evening, Bayo came calling to see Bisi. Upon seeing her, he started behaving strangely. He suddenly said he needed to leave. Bisi was confused at Bayo's behavior, but thought that maybe he was having a bad day. It was more than 4 days, and she did not hear from Bayo. He never stayed this long away without coming to see her. When Bisi got to Bayo's house and met him there, she told him she was worried and had come to check on him. Bayo told her that he needed some space and that he was feeling suffocated. He sounded nothing like the kind and gentleman she had come to know and love. Bisi walked back home sad and worried, not knowing what had happened to make Bayo this way. On her way back, she stopped at Bisi's house to share her worries. She consoles Bisi, telling her that maybe he is having difficulties with his business to give him some time. As Bisi walks away still crying, Shady smiles with a sinister look on her face. She is happy the herbalist's charm has worked. Bisi spends the next few days waiting for Bayo to come calling. She spends most of her days indoors crying. Unable to bear the silence anyone, she decides to go back to see Bayo one more time. Bisi stood outside Bayo's home, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been crying for hours, unsure of how to make things right between them. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the village, but the unresolved tension weighed more heavily on her than the fading light. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, his voice filled with anger. Bisi flinched at his tone, her hands trembling as she took a step back. I just came to check on you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't need you to check on me," Bayo shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet village. "Just go, Bisi. You're the last person I want to see right now. This relationship is over." Tears welled up in Bisi's eyes, but she fought to hold them back. She didn't know what to say, only that she had to leave before her heart shattered completely. Without another word, she turned and walked away, feeling the weight of his anger pressing down on her back as she went back home. BC wept all the way home, unable to believe what had just happened. The next day, soft murmur of village gossip filled the air as Shade walked along the path leading to the market. Just as she was about to pass a group of women sitting beneath a tree, she caught BC's name being whispered among them. "Have you heard? Bayo told his friends he's done with BC," one woman said, shaking her head. Shade's ears perked up and she slowed her pace, positioning herself just within earshot, pretending to be distracted by something else. Inside, her heart raced with excitement. Eager for more, she returned to the herbalist, ready for the final charm that would bind Jide to her forever. But this time, Baba Olumide had other plans. As Shade stood before him, her desperation clear, the herbalist smirked. "You've come for more, but beware of what you wish for," he warned, his voice thick with a dark promise. Without hesitation, Shady nodded. "I don't care. I want him." But as Baba Olumide prepared the new charm, he whispered an incantation meant not for Bayo, but for Shade. The charm wasn't designed to win over the BC's fiancé. No, it was meant to bind Shade to the herbalist himself. As soon as Shade touched it, a strange warmth spread through her body, clouding her mind. Before she realized what had happened, Shady was hopelessly in love with the herbalist. She refused to leave the herbalist's home, and from that moment, she started to live with the herbalist as his wife. Her family started looking for her and were worried. Search parties were set up until they started to hear the news of her living with the herbalist. The sun had barely risen when Shady's parents arrived at the herbalist's hut. They had been searching for her, worried about the whispers spreading through the village. The moment they reached the hut, Shady's mother knocked frantically on the door, her heart pounding with fear and concern. The sun had barely risen when Shady's parents arrived at the herbalist's hut. They had been searching for her, worried about the whispers spreading through the village. The moment they reached the hut, the herbalist asked them what they wanted. They told him they wanted to take their daughter home. He told them to take her if she wanted to go with them. "Shady, please, my daughter, come back home." Her mother's voice trembled as she called out. Her father stood beside her, his face etched with worry. Her mother rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. "Shady, this is madness. You cannot stay here with this man. Come home, your family is worried about you." Shady stood up slowly, her eyes calm and steady as she looked at her parents. "I love him, Mama. I'm not leaving." But Shade remained firm, her voice unwavering. "No, I belong here. I love him." Her father's voice, usually calm and measured, cracked with emotion. "This is not the life for you, Shady. You belong with your family, not here with him." He glanced at the herbalist with disdain. Her mother gasped, her hands trembling as she reached for Shade's arm. "You don't know what you're saying. This isn't love, it's a spell. Shady, please come to your senses." The herbalist sat quietly, a sly smile playing on his lips, watching the scene unfold. Shady pulled her arm away gently from her mother's grasp, shaking her head. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I'm staying." They pleaded with Baba Olumide, and he told them slyly that they could take her home as long as she is willing to go with them, knowing fully well that she would never agree to go with them unless the spell was broken. Days turned into weeks, and Shady found herself trapped in a nightmare. The villagers began to notice that Shady had become the herbalist's wife, a position no one envied. She had lost herself to the dark magic, completely unaware of the chains that now bound her to Baba Olumide. She lived under his roof, obeying his every command, and yet she had no understanding of how far she had fallen. While Shady was lost under the spell, BC, heartbroken and confused by the sudden change in her relationship, sought help. A powerful man of God came to her help. With the spiritual intervention, Baba Olumide's charm lost its power. BC and Bayo reconciled, their love stronger than before. They married soon after, in a beautiful ceremony filled with joy and celebration, a stark contrast to the dark and twisted life Shade had been drawn into. Shade was oblivious to BC's happiness. She was trapped in a haze of enchantment, completely unaware that her plan had backfired. She was now the wife of a man she never loved, living in the shadow of her own greed. Just when Shade's fate seemed sealed, a new player entered the scene. Baba Olumide's son, Bode, was as cunning as his father, though his ambitions were darker. He had always been jealous of the power his father wielded over the village and wanted to carve his own path. When he saw Shade, he desired her for himself, but he knew he couldn't simply take her. She was bound to his father through the charm.